Now, back to Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
All right. We are joined right now by Odyssey MLB insider Bret Boone. Insider calls are presented by Grainger. With supplies and solutions for every industry, Grainger has the right product for you. Call, click, Grainger.com, or just stop by. Bret is also the host of the Bret Boone podcast, featuring the most notable names in Major League Baseball and around sports every week. He was a decade-plus second baseman, a Gold Glover, a Silver Slugger. Thank you so much for joining us, Bret. Really appreciate it.
You got it. How you doing?
Oh, doing well. I'm looking at the National League. Here's where I'm going to start. I'm looking at the National League standings right now, and there's about 7 teams that are all bunched up. The Cubs are 33 and 35, and we go all the way down to the Diamondbacks, and there's about 5 teams in between. How would you handicap the let's say the last 2 wild cards? Because it looks like, there's 8-10 teams that, could get there.
There is, especially in the National League. I broke it down to this. I think there's 2 elite teams in the National League. That's the Phillies and that's the Dodgers. Other than that, everybody else is kind of in that next, you drop down to that next category and you kind of got the Atlanta Braves of the world. The Brewers, I think, are a second tier. And then everybody else is kind of put in this kind of melting pot. It's kind of the Padres. San Francisco, if it ended today and it was playoff time, San Francisco's in.
Yeah.
But you look in that Central Division, other than the Brewers, it's as mediocre as any division in baseball. When second place is under 500 and everybody follows suit there, but it's tightly bunched. After Atlanta in the East, there's not much there. You got Washington's even ahead of the Mets right now. Mets in 4th place. And then this West, which I really thought was going to be the best division in baseball with the Dodgers. I thought the Padres were going to be better. I thought San Francisco with that pitching staff, although the Giants have been beat up this year. They're just getting healthy. Obviously, Snell hasn't been what's expected to this point, and he's coming off an injury hopefully soon. He's crucial for the San Francisco Giants to make a legitimate run. He's got to be healthy. But that pitching staff, especially the starters, very formidable. Arizona has been a big disappointment for me. I look at them a year ago going to the World Series, 2 games away from being World Series champion. I thought they improved themselves this offseason. It just hasn't worked out so far. Gallen and Kelly at the top of the rotation have gone down. And then the Colorados, the Miamis of the world. I think I put the Mets, Washington in that same category. They're not going to make a run. So it comes down to, is Cincinnati, Chicago, or St. Louis in the Central going to make a run? And what is San Francisco and the Padres going to do on the West Coast? I think the Dodgers are the obvious class of that division. And then you go to the East Coast and you got Philly at the top of the division. Philly could be the best team in baseball. Just well-rounded. They got stars all over the field. And I think this year, the young third baseman Bohm has got into that star class. And so they just got one more star. The pitching, they're starting pitching has been phenomenal. I think number 1 in the National League with Nola, Suarez, and Wheeler. So they're going to be tough. We saw them a year ago. They were tough then. They're going to be tough now. But the rest of it's kind of up for grabs. But right now, Giants, Pods, and Dodgers from the West Coast, all in the playoffs as of today.
I agree, Bret, and wholeheartedly agree about the pitching staff being the strength of the Giants, though they haven't gotten healthy. And I want to zero in on one guy because yesterday was Logan Webb's day, and look, 12 of his 15 starts this year, he's gotten at least 6 innings. He's pitched the most innings in the National League, actually Major League Baseball over the last 2 years now. It seems like he's always in the 6th or the 7th. He's always competing, and after a Cy Young runner-up, it feels like he should be in the conversation with the top guys in baseball, and yet for whatever reason isn't. I mean, when you think about Logan Webb, do you feel like he is an ace? And if not, how come he doesn't get that kind of respect? Is it because he's throwing more changeups than fastballs? Because he's an old school pitcher? I consider him a 1, and I'm just curious if you do.
He's absolutely a 1. I've never faced him, but what my eye sees when I watch him pitch, he's absolutely a 1. I've been saying for a long time now, he's always in the conversation for me at the beginning of the season where we're handicapping who's going to be in the Cy Young race. I always have Logan Webb waiting for that day to just come to fruition. But I think if you ask hitters around baseball, when Webb is right and he's out there, he's definitely a one for those guys. So yeah, I don't take into consideration new school, old school type pitching. Webb, without a doubt, for me, is a number one. You just got to have Snell. He's really got to. He's that guy. Jordan Hicks has been a huge. Has done a great job going from the bullpen to the starting rotation. Harrison and Wynn, but man, you got to have Snell. And I think that was the reservation that the Padres had. You know, a year ago, he wins a Cy Young. How many teams don't even have a conversation with a Cy Young Award winner? Snell went out on the open market, went to the San Francisco Giants, because I think with Snell, like with a lot of the free agents this past winter that were signed, and everybody was saying, why isn't Boris getting it done? Well, if you look at him, it's a guy like Snell. He wins a Cy Young in Tampa. He goes to the Padres, has a few okay, decent years, and then all of a sudden emerges as a dominant Cy Young a year ago. So with the Snell, it's always been, yeah, we'll take the Snell that wins a Cy Young, but we don't know what we're going to get. Giants are finding out that right now, and hopefully for the Giants' sake, Snell gets it on the right track coming back from this, I believe it was a groin or a hamstring. Yeah. You'll have him back soon because you got to have him. If you want to compete in that division, with the Dodgers at the top, and compete for a playoff spot. I think you, at the top of the show, you talked that you agreed that starting rotation is the strength of that Giants. I think that the city you play in, the ballpark you play in, all plays a factor, but at the end of the day, it's that starting rotation, and for them to make a run, Snell's got to be right.
Insider calls are brought to you by Grainger. For the ones who get it done, Grainger offers professional-grade supplies and solutions made for every industry and backed by product experts. Call clickgrainger.com or just stop by. Bret Boone, former Gold Glover and Silver Slugger, joining us on 95.7 The Game. Bret, how many – baseball's such a long season and there's ebbs and flows. How many games would you say it takes before you really can know what your team is?
Well, I think if you take out of the equation, if you've had a lopsided amount of injuries – I think there's exceptions for that, but
sure.
if for the most part you go through April and you get through May with your main guys and everybody remaining somewhat healthy, I think you have a pretty good feel of what your team is at this point in the season. Difference is from now and 15, 20, 25 years ago is the 162-game schedule is not as crucial as it used to be. Back in the day, and you probably have to go even farther back into the 80s on when it was really imperative that you win, and you win the marathon of 162 because there was only two teams from each league going to the playoffs. Now you've got 12, 6 from each league. So the 162, the purist in me doesn't like it. The player in me loved that 162 game grind because when you were standing at the end, you were a champion and you were the best of the best for 162 games. As modern day, and we've changed the format, and it's 12 to get in, and not the best team always wins. I think we've watched that the last few years. You know, Arizona just limping into the playoffs, 2 games away from winning a World Series. Dodgers of winning 111 games, 104 games, not getting out of the first round. So it's proven that today, sometimes the formula is going through that wild card route, so anything's up for grabs. The purist in me, the player in me, I don't like it as much. But now sitting here, the 55-year-old analyst that watches the game from an entertainment value and for the good of the game, I think it's awesome.
Well, speaking of the player, Bret, I mean, you had pop, you could hit for average. The 2 Silver Sluggers obviously speak to that. But you also played in different ballparks. You played in hitters' parks, and you played in a park in Seattle that isn't considered necessarily a hitter's park. I know you still had multiple 35-plus home run seasons there, but as somebody that enters, say, Oracle Park in San Francisco for the first time, how big of an adjustment is it when, say, you're Jorge Soler, you're coming off a 36 home run season, you've hit 40 more in your career. How difficult is it to adjust to the fact that you might not hit as many home runs, that when you connect with that ball, it's just not going to go as far? How tough is that as a hitter?
Well, I look at it even more at your ballpark up there in San Francisco from a left-hander, because right center, and that's what makes what Bonds did off the charts impressive to me. It's a couple years ago when Aaron Judge was close to signing with the San Francisco Giants, the player in me took a step back, and I didn't know the integrals, what was going on behind the scenes, but I thought there's no way Aaron Judge, the captain of the Yankees, who had been passed on from Derek Jeter and was the heir apparent, is not going to sign with the New York Yankees and go to a ballpark in San Francisco that doesn't fit his mold. A lot of his home runs are fly balls to right center field. In San Francisco, those are outs. Now, as a player, as a hitter, you take all those things into consideration when you're a free agent and you're making a move. Yeah, the money probably is the number one factor, but you always think, where am I comfortable? Do I like the batter's box? Does this ballpark set up to my eye? And it's tough going to San Francisco. I started off playing at Candlestick Park. I played in the new park 2 or 3 series, but it was always tough going to San Francisco from a weather standpoint. It could be in the middle of summer. You got long sleeves, and it's a little bit cold. The wind's whipping. You never know. So I always thought the Giants kind of had a built-in home field advantage, a little more than the rest of us, because as hitters, I'll be honest with you, I didn't like going to San Francisco, and that's a positive for the home team there.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because one of the things we were talking about today was Matt Cain's perfect game 12 years ago. So I was curious just how that offense measured up, and they were dead last in the National League in home runs, but they were number 3 in batting average, and that's how their offense was able to produce. Do you think that it is possible to put together a great offense without the home run ball, with how good pitching is in the modern game?
I think without a doubt you can. I think you've got to play the game like the Kansas City Royals are playing this year. You've got to play kind of, I like to stay away from the word old school, but I think you play baseball and you play it correctly. It really develops from a team standpoint, a camaraderie that you can't get. You got guys moving runners. You got guys hitting sacrifice flies in sacrifice fly situations. Man, that builds, because you sit there as a team and you go, if the main guys in this lineup, the 2, the 3, the 4 hole hitters are moving runners and getting the job done and playing kind of old school baseball, I'll be damned if the 25th, 26th man on the roster is not going to do the same thing. I had that camaraderie a little bit when I was in Seattle. And it was Edgar Martinez. I remember one day, it was an 8-2 game, and he hit a 2-hop grounder to the second baseman. Obviously moved the runner on purpose with no outs. The next guy ended up hitting the sac fly. And I went up to Edgar and I said, "Why'd you do that?" 8-2. He said, "I found that you played this game right over the long haul, over 162 games, you will come out on top." And I always took that to heart, and I started doing that. And now the next guy's doing it, and the next guy's doing it. So yes, it's about developing that camaraderie, that kind of aura in the clubhouse where you're all pulling on the same end of the rope. So without a doubt, in the modern game, without hitting a lot of home runs, if you play the game right and get that going and just pass it from one guy, pass that torch from one guy to the next, you can definitely be successful in 2024.
Bret, what was your favorite park to hit in? And do you know essentially what you hit in all the opposing ballparks?
Well, you mentioned, and back then it was Safeco Field, and they've moved the fences in since. But yeah, it was always noted as a pitcher's ballpark for some reason. There's no rhyme or reason for it. I just loved hitting at Safeco. Always had success, and people used to say, "How do you like hitting here?" And I didn't know why. I didn't know whether I saw the ball well or what it was, or it was just that part of my career. But I had a lot of success at Safeco Field. I loved coming to Anaheim. I went to high school and college in Southern California, and maybe it was the home cooking. And I couldn't replay. I loved going to Wrigley. I didn't get to play a ton of series once I went back to the American League there. But I'll tell you, there's nothing like going to Old Yankee Stadium. Just the whole experience, being in the city of New York for 4 days, walking down, to get the paper in the morning and have guys from across the street screaming at you how you stink and you're going to get crushed tonight. Nothing replaced that for me. I love going to Old Yankee Stadium, but that was more the experience than the actual ballpark. The ballparks are weird. Everybody's different. Some pitchers like certain mounds at certain places. Some hitters like certain setups and how it looks to your eye, like a golfer likes a golf hole. Camden Yards, back in the day, they had a terrible rotation. Their team wasn't very good. It was a hitter-friendly ballpark, and I could not get a hit. and everybody else there, the bats would be flying off the rack, and I was like, when do we leave Baltimore? Because I don't know what it is. I didn't see the ball well. Something was off to my eye. I didn't like it. So there's no rhyme or reason. Everybody has their favorites, and usually those cities, no matter how great or how bad the ballpark was, if you hit there, you love that ballpark.
Well, I got to tell you what, Brett, for a guy who didn't necessarily enjoy San Francisco, hitting 295 there is pretty good. I'm looking at it right now.
I'll tell you this.
lot of flares?
Most of my games there were at Old Candlestick. There was no restroom in the dugout. If you needed to go to the clubhouse during the game, you had to walk across the field. Everything was going against you, wind blowing 100 miles an hour, swirling. And I'll tell you, you get in the box, it feels terrible. But I did have some success there. I hit some balls that I thought were pop-ups that went 10 rows deep. And believe me, though, I hit some balls that I leaned on and thought were 20 rows deep and didn't even get to the warning track. So you never knew what you were going to get when you were in San Francisco. But, yeah, I guess Candlestick. I never liked going there. It's almost like facing Pedro Martinez. I never want to face Pedro, but I always found a way to sneak a walk and a knockout that day. Didn't mean I liked facing him, just means the results came. Similar to San Francisco.
Yeah, hey, I'm old enough that when you say old Yankee Stadium, Brett, I think of original Yankee Stadium. So that tells you my demographic.
Yeah, love that play. Nothing like it. Nothing. The ghosts of Yankee Stadium.
No, I agree. Hey,
they
Brett.
will come out.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Brett. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to talking to you as the summer continues.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That was Odyssey MLB insider Bret Boone. Insider calls are presented by Grainger. With supplies and solutions for every industry, Grainger has the right product for you. Call, click, Grainger.com, or just